We live in a multi-layered ecosystem. Though the layers may change, the fundamental laws governing them remain largely the same from top to bottom. I classify these layers as follows. 1. The jungle, state of nature. 2. The economic jungle, civilization. 3. The ideological ecosystem. The jungle. The most fundamental concepts of an ecosystem are easiest to understand at its most basic level, so let's start there. In the jungle, strength is currency, survival of the fittest is the law, and natural selection determines who thrives, who perishes, and who evolves. The dominant form of power is usually raw muscular strength, though intelligence can also play a decisive role. Success is determined by an individual's ability to survive and by the collective strength of a species, a group of individuals with shared characteristics. The economic jungle. As we move to the broader sense of the economic jungle, or what we call civilization, the rules remain largely the same. Only the terms change. Wealth replaces power. Influence replaces intelligence. Survival is still dictated by resources. A person lacking wealth and influence cannot afford the basic necessities of survival: food, nourishment, and medical care. In the jungle, a predator gains sustenance by using its strength to hunt and kill. In civilization, sustenance is acquired through currency, which serves the same fundamental purpose. If a predator in the wild loses its ability to hunt, it dies. Similarly, a man without money faces a powerless and obscure death, unless rescued by the generosity of others, which is an exception, not the rule. Despite the world producing enough food to feed everyone, only those who abide by the economic jungle's laws have access to it. Economic predators. In the jungle, a predator-prey dynamic exists. The same holds true in economics. Tycoons and corporations are the apex predators. The poor are the prey. Just as some predators overpower their prey with sheer strength, others use deception and poison. Similarly, in the economic world, some amass wealth through brute force, while others thrive on manipulation and exploitation. The ideological ecosystem. The third and final layer, the most abstract yet the most fundamental, is the ecosystem of ideas. Most conflicts that manifest in physical and economic ecosystems originate here, in the intangible world of ideas. This essay does not aim to analyze specific ideologies, but rather to explore the fundamental laws that govern them. Perception is power and the role of identity. Where raw strength determines survival in the jungle and wealth dictates success in civilization, in the ecosystem of ideas, perception is power. Ideas that seem irrational or extreme to outsiders persist because the minds that hold them operate within an entirely different framework of reality. Their world is perceived through the lens of their ideology, and anything outside it is seen as a threat. The most powerful ideas are those that integrate into personal identity. When people define themselves by an idea, challenging that idea feels like an attack on their very existence. For example, a man who believes in Christ idea calls himself a Christian identity. A man who believes in a political ideology may call himself a capitalist, socialist, or anarchist. Enduring ideas share this trait. They create a sense of belonging and communal identity. Emotional resonance and mutualism. This link between identity and ideas is deeply emotional. Humans by nature are emotional beings. Rationality is an uphill battle against personal desires, biases, and emotional attachments. Ideas that provide community, belonging, and purpose have a higher chance of survival in a society driven by emotion. An idea that offers both survival and emotional fulfillment behaves like a mutualistic parasite. It thrives by providing its host with a sense of purpose. Echo chambers and stagnation. In a natural ecosystem, competition and conflict drive evolution. A stagnant ecosystem is unhealthy and self-destructive in the long run, even if in the short term its members survive longer. Ideas follow the same pattern. An echo chamber, an environment where only one idea circulates, prevents intellectual diversity and stifles evolution. Though such ideas may persist in isolated communities, they rarely pass through multiple generations unchanged. For an idea to remain relevant, it must evolve. Ideas that resist evolution become weak, dismissible, and eventually obsolete. The predator and the prey, leaders and followers. Like all ecosystems, the world of ideas has a predator-prey dynamic, though here it manifests as leaders and followers. A leader introduces an idea. That idea erases competing thoughts in the minds of its followers, replacing them with its own doctrine. This process resembles a virus hijacking a cell. It replicates itself, consumes its host, and spreads to new minds. Just as viruses have genetic codes, ideas have tenets and creeds, rigid, unchanging core principles that are transferred from host to host. However, even the most dogmatic ideas mutate over time. This broadly applies to all systems where certain ideas are suppressed. An artificially selected ecosystem of ideas allows some concepts to flourish while others are rooted out or tabooed. For example, a theocratic society might kill those whose minds are breeding grounds for rational thought. A totalitarian regime might eliminate ideas of freedom and democracy. Conversely, a liberal society might suppress totalitarian ideologies. Now one must ask, why does such intervention become the norm? Why not let the best ideas win? Why even bet on any horse? This question takes us back to our first layer. We did not evolve intelligence as a tool for pure rationality. Instead, intelligence developed as a survival mechanism, a tool to outsmart predators. Our intelligence and reasoning are shaped by fear and emotion, evolutionary vestiges that influence how ideas spread and survive. People associate beliefs with identity due to this instinct of emotional attachment, and humans by nature avoid hardship. A dictator will never want to live as a common man because that life involves struggle and hard labor. One could argue that power is sought out of a disdain for hard work. People desire luxury, and their obsession with comfort and ease fuels their pursuit of power and wealth. Power provides the ability to escape hardship, so those who attain it manipulate ideas to maintain their position. But one might ask, what does power have to do with ideas? The answer is everything. Power is the currency produced and distributed by the factory of ideas. Power resides where people believe it resides. A king is no more powerful than a slave in raw strength. In a one-on-one duel, the slave might have a better chance of winning. Yet the king holds power not because of his strength but because his people believe he does. A king is a king only because his army believes in his authority. If his soldiers stop obeying him, he is powerless. If his people withdraw their support, he can be overthrown by a handful of guards. A man holds no power, ideas hold power. And ideas do not need to be true to be powerful. They only need to be believed by enough people. This multi-layered ecosystem of nature, economics, and ideology operates under the same fundamental principles. Power is not merely physical, economic, or intellectual. It is, at its core, a belief system. The world is shaped not by absolute truth but by the ideas people choose to believe in. We might think our perception of ideas is our own, but it really isn't. Imagine how many people, in the name of culture or tradition, carry on with vague or even sometimes downright barbaric traditions. These people think themselves just as rational as anyone else. If you are born a woman in a culture where a woman is required to cut off her left hand, and every woman you ever meet has the same, it's highly likely you will never question it or consider it barbaric because it is the norm. Some forms of mutilation do exist even now in cultures, but since those are engraved into the identity of people from those cultures, instead of being called out, they have already become part of their identities. Normal is defined according to the cultural and social environment they come from, and it's engraved so deeply into their subconscious that they don't even realize their very concept of normal is borrowed. I am not arguing for an objective normalcy, just pointing out the fact that there isn't one. Since so much of what we might perceive as basic common sense is derived and subjective, that leaves us with an even more profound question. So far, we have argued that one thing that might define the survival of an idea is rationality. But what of rationality itself? Is it something independent of human perceptions? Is it immune to our evolutionary taint? The biases that cloud our intelligence, the biases we don't even know we hold. Rationality is, at the most fundamental level, a psychological process. Though there are axioms and rules that it follows, those axioms and rules too are man-made and hence carry some form of evolutionary bias. The process of reasoning itself is untrustworthy at best, since it's based on axioms that are also made by minds, like the law of non-contradiction. But these reasons that we consider so objective have broken down multiple times, even in the testable realms of science. Light and matter have dual natures, as particles and waves. These axioms, though seemingly true, and if accepted, they make the process of reasoning somewhat objective, are ultimately made by the mind to explain the perceptions of things the mind observes. Though rational thought is far better than irrational thought, even it cannot lay claim to being objectively true. The pursuit of truth in the realm of ideas is vague, and even if there exists a truth, we lack the capacity to reach it. But don't let this statement be a justification for fairy tales. This statement is meant to be a reflection of skepticism toward what we think to be true, not a justification for what we know to be untrue. We don't know what's objectively true, cannot be used as a justification to say 2 plus 2 is equal to 5. So, is it in vain to search for truth? No, it isn't, because the search will yield more understanding of the nature of things. Though we will never know everything, all the whys and hows of the universe and the nature of things in it, understanding and evolution of the process of reasoning and logic itself will be achieved only through this unending pursuit of unattainable truth. That understanding, reasoning, logic, and their evolution are the things that will improve the living standards of people, help them form more complex ideas, and through that continued evolution of reasoning and questioning, we have broken the shackles of slavery, landed on the moon, split the atom, and gained a better understanding of our place in the universe. I might have considered a missing left hand normal, but now that I know people who have both hands and what they've done with them, and how I can't, I want to not have my left hand removed. People might take pride in a missing hand or make it their identity, but eventually, they will recognize it as a disability through the virtue of observation and exercising reasoning. As far from objectivity as it might be, the introduction of ideas based on rational principles will eventually overtake those based solely on tradition and word of mouth.